Hi everyone, welcome to Belle's Books. I'm Carly and today I'm going to be doing my best books of 2021. So I've picked a weird list of 12 books to talk to you about. I don't know why I picked 12. I went through my Goodreads list and these were the ones that I picked out as my top reads of 2021. So I read either 50 or 51 books, can't remember, last year. I am a slow reader by BookTube standards. I know I don't read as fast as other people, and 50 is not a massive number, but that's fine with me because I work 3 part-time jobs, I'm writing a PhD, and I do lots of other reading for teaching and my PhD, so I'm cool with 50 books a year. That's good. Apologies for my croaky voice. I have a cold. I don't have COVID, but Dan does, which is weird because he's had it for a week and we're trying to avoid each other, but it's difficult moving around the house when you live with someone, not to get close to them. It's like, oh, bumping into each other in the house and be like, oh, get away from me. But I've been testing negative every day, but I do have this cold. I don't know what's going on there. Anyway, I have a croaky voice. So I'm going to start, these are in no particular order either. I'm not doing a 12 to 1, my favourite book of the year. I don't know what my favourite book of the year is, to be honest. These are just a stack of 12 that I very much enjoyed and were my top reads. I have quite a few that I don't have copies of because they were library books, so I'll post a picture here as usual. The first one I want to speak about is a short story collection. It is Tools for Surviving a Storm by Nadia Henderson. I have spoken about this in my winter wrap-up. I've also spoken about it in a vlog, which I have not yet posted. I keep talking about this vlog when I went away on a writing retreat, and I read this and talked about it then, and I loved it very much. So I will get around to posting that vlog, hopefully very soon. This is a short story collection that looks at lots of different kinds of characters in different environments. It is mostly about human interaction with the natural world. I know Nadia. I met her through a creative writing course that we both did called Write Like a Girl, run by Kerry Ryan over at For Book's Sake. I'm sorry, this is going to keep happening. And so, that's my disclaimer. I know her, but this book is incredible. The prose is so tightly crafted and beautifully written. The characters are so well drawn. The nature writing is perfect. I just love it. And these stories are so varied as well. So the ones I've spoken about before are my favourites. Are one called Monsters, which is about a mother and a daughter that go swimming in a natural pond. So it's like the Hampstead Ladies Pond kind of deal. They go swimming there every morning, and the young daughter has a make-believe friend that she sees in the pond. I can't remember the name of it now, but it's like this creature that lives in the pond. And the thing that I love about this collection is there are hints of, sorry, I keep picking up my tea. There are hints of like magic realism, but it's like you don't know whether it's something a bit supernatural, something a bit weird, and I love that. So this mother-daughter relationship is kind of looked at through the way that they go swimming every morning to this pond, and there's a friend or another mum that kind of is critiquing her parenting skills for like leaving her daughter alone in the pond, and her daughter is talking about this creature that she keeps seeing to her school friend, and it's upsetting her school friend. So this other mum is being not very nice, saying you shouldn't let your daughter talk about these things that aren't real. And it's about the creature's life being put in danger by the pollution that is being put into the lake through like acid rain, that kind of thing. So I really enjoyed that story because as I said, I've been wild swimming a lot last year and really enjoyed it. And that when you read something that resonates with your own personal experience, I think is really engaging. So I love that story. There's just some awesome stories in here. Also one about 2 girls, I think it's set in Spain, La Palma is mentioned, and they're running around this kind of, it feels like almost a dystopian town where lots of things have abandoned. There's been lots of building projects that have stalled, and they're living kind of almost with free reign. Their mum is very obsessed with buying things like antiques or art on an eBay kind of style website, and they're running around this landscape which is very hot and dry, and there's again another hint of potentially a wolf creature that they call out to. Is it a wolf? Is it the girls? I just love it. I love that sense of something is a bit weird but you're not quite sure what it is. Is it the people? Is it a creature? I enjoyed it very much. And one of the later stories about two characters doing field work in an area where there's been logging happening, and they're like interrogating what's the effect of the logging on the landscape and the trees, and then these two characters start being covered in lichen, and I love that. I just thought it was brilliant, and a relationship is kind of blossoming between them, but there's also tension. I just loved it. Her writing is just beautiful. Please pick it up. This is published by Dear Damsels. I just think it's wonderful. Please go read it. Okay, then let's talk about, I'm going to do it in the order I've written it down. The Manningtree Witches, another recent read I read in October. This is about the women that were accused of being witches by Matthew Hopkins, who is the Witchfinder General. And it is their story. So it's a fictionalized take on what these women would have been through, how they would have felt. It's just a group of women that were kind of impoverished and that were accused of witchcraft, and most of them were hanged. Our protagonist is Rebecca, I think it's West, her surname. Both her and her mother are accused of witchcraft, and it's told partly through first person perspective of Rebecca. I love her, she's a great character. And there is like again another little bit of hint of maybe a bit magic, because she has like dreams and she sees like a dark figure behind her. Is it the devil, or is it just the influence of this witch mania that is sweeping the country along at the time of the Civil War? And it interrogates the role of Matthew Hopkins as, what was he doing? Did he really believe all this stuff, or was he just feeling guilty because he couldn't fight in the war and therefore wanted to have something to do to prove his worth as a man, and he took on this ridiculous task of hunting witches. So I really enjoyed this story. I think when I spoke about it in a wrap up, I did say it didn't fall short, but I had so much expectation because of the hype that I was like, oh, okay, that wasn't what I thought it was, but it was. I keep thinking about it, and it was still a really great read. I loved the kind of the very tangible feel of the prose. I said before that it puts you in that place, it puts you in that community. You're smelling the things that they're smelling, and most of the time it's gross, so you get a very kind of gross appreciation of everything that's going on with the sensory details, and that is magnificent. I loved it very much. All of these books, I've picked them because either they've had a lasting effect on me, I keep thinking about them, which I do in this case, and or I would reread them. I would reread all of these books. And this one, I wanted to read more about the witch trials, like non-fiction afterwards, and more accounts like this, because I read Lois the Witch from Elizabeth Gaskell, which was a short story around Victober time, and that was kind of a little bit similar, where she was taking the story of Lois, who was accused of being a witch, and running with it from her perspective. So I find that stuff really fascinating. I just love it. I'm also very intrigued to read more by A.K. Blakemore, because I just love the writing style. Then I read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, which is one of my favourites for this year. I'd never read it before, remarkably, and I just loved it so much. I really enjoyed Shelley's writing style. I loved the nature writing, the polarities between Victor Frankenstein as a guy that is cutting himself off from people and nature to focus so intently on this discovery, this knowledge that he wants to find, this scientific breakthrough that he wants to make his name in the world of science. And then when he does so, he is appalled at himself and what that does to his person, like physically and mentally. And it's a heartbreaking story. Everyone knows the story of Frankenstein. It is heartbreaking, and I was like, I'm so sad for the monster. I just want to give him a big hug. But the writing is just exquisite. I loved it. I loved all the themes in this book. As I said before, I read it because I was teaching it for a class, and it was a really good class. We spoke a lot about the themes of romanticism and Shelley's critique of the literary canon and all of that jazz. It was just magnificent. I really enjoyed it and would definitely, obviously, reread it. And then, a book that I don't have with me, so I put a picture up. I read A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Brigid Kemmerer. This is a YA fantasy book that is a riff on Beauty and the Beast. And I'm here for any fairy tale riffs. I love it. It was everything I wanted and more. So this is the first of a trilogy, and I've just started reading the second book. So while I would read this again, it's a trilogy, so I'm reading the whole series. And I just loved it. I loved the fact that it was set in modern day. So we start off with our protagonist, who I've immediately forgotten her name, Harper, in Washington DC, and she is snatched and taken into the other world of Emberfell by Grey, who is the crown prince's guardsman, and he keeps taking these women to try and get the crown prince Ren to fall in love with them so that the curse may be broken. The curse is placed on him by Lilith, an enchantress, and every season he must make a girl fall in love with him, and if he doesn't, he turns into a beast. That old beast storyline. So I just loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved that our protagonist Harper had a disability, and that was represented very well, I thought. And I loved the pacing of the plot. I just was here for the story. I wanted to get absorbed in a magical world, and I was. I loved the characters, and I'm like, as soon as I finished it, order the next one, please. I just really want YA fantasy when the world is shit. And obviously the world is still shit, so I'm here for it. It was excellent. Everything I wanted and some. So yes, very good indeed. Then another one I don't have, Mrs. Death by Salena Godden. I listened to this on audiobook, and I would recommend it on audiobook because Salena reads it and her voice is just like treacle. It sweeps you along, and it's just everything. This book is kind of harsh. So it is about Mrs. Death, who is Death. She is a working class black woman, and she's kind of had enough. I really like the sections where she talks about her sister life. I'm like, what a bitch her sister is. And it's about our protagonist Wolf, who is writing the memoirs of Mrs. Death. So Wolf is a struggling young writer and buys this antique desk that seems to be used as like a conduit for Mrs. Death to interact with Wolf, and Wolf is writing Mrs. Death's memoirs, and so it's very fragmented, this book. We follow Wolf and his interactions with Mrs. Death, but there's also like fragments of like historical fiction. So one of my favourite parts was we go back to like Victorian times, where I think it's around Jack the Ripper times, where we're following this these girls that are trying to make money. Or there's this one girl I can't remember her name. I want to say something about tuppence or tuppenny, I don't know, I can't remember, but it was about her mum pimping her out. So her mum would like put her in this room, and these men would basically pay to like watch her and do horrible things. And it's about her death and all the deaths of the people that Mrs. Death has facilitated in whatever various forms they take, and they're so varied. It's quite traumatic. There is also a lot of swearing in here. There's a lot of graphic grossness again, which I mean, generally I don't deal well with bodily stuff, but it was so good. Like I say, I would recommend the audiobook. It was just one of those books that really stayed with me, and I keep thinking about, and I want to reread it like in a physical copy of it, so I want to get hold of a physical copy. I just really found it a very kind of moving, profound, and extreme reading experience, I guess. But I would definitely recommend. I loved it. I'd recommend all of these because they're my favourite books. Then Detransition Babied by Torrey Peters. I read this quite early on, I think. I can't remember, but I got a library copy, and when I saw this was available in a charity shop, snapped it right up because I thought I'm going to reread this. It was amazing. I think because it's just something I'd never read before, and that stood out to me. So this book is about two trans characters, Reese and Ames, or Amy. Amy detransitions to become Ames, and then has a relationship with his boss and gets her pregnant, and it's about them trying to navigate this weird family situation, and Ames then wants to bring in his ex-girlfriend Reese into the mix to become a mother to this child. So it's about them navigating that whole scenario, but we get the backstory of Amy and the backstory of Reese. And like I say, these are characters that I just never encountered before. I felt like it was very eye-opening. It's quite extreme in terms of like their sexual preferences and like the fetishization of stuff, that the things that they do, and yeah, I guess it can be seen as quite extreme and not, I don't know, well, you know, this is a book about trans characters written by a trans author, so I'm here for that. There was a lot of humour in here, but dark humour. There's some really difficult stuff in here to read. So I don't really know how to sum it up. I just thought it was amazing. Also really loved her writing style, and will read anything else that she writes. I just thought it was so different, and this is a narrative that I've not heard before, and we need more of these different voices and extreme characters and extreme way of living, and shining a light on the difficulties of trans lives. So yeah, we'll definitely reread this at some point as well. I think I might listen to that on audiobook. I like to do that. If I've read it in physical form, I like to reread in audio, and vice versa. Another one that I had on audio, I'll put a picture here, is On the Red Hill by Mike Parker. Now, I didn't expect this to be one of my favourite books of the year. I just really enjoyed it, and I think also when I have an audiobook, it's bound up with the location that I'm in. So I listened to this audiobook mostly when I was walking to and from work. So I walk across a piece of common land, and On the Red Hill is very much about nature writing. It's beautiful descriptions of the seasons turning. So it takes you through all of the seasons. It takes you through the lives of these four men. So Mike and his partner Preds, as they move to Wales, and their histories, and they inherit a farmhouse from these two men that I think they witnessed them have their marriage ceremony, Reg and George. This was in Wales, and Reg and George left their house to Mike and Preds, and I just loved it so much. The friendship that those four men had, the relationships, the way that they were described, the way that you get their backstories, if you will, because Mike and Preds were left not just their house but the diaries and all the possessions of Reg and George. So we really get a feel for their lives as Mike is talking us through like their diaries, is they're reading their diaries, they're looking at the books that they read. There's a really nice description of like all the books that they've read in their house, and both of them, Reg and George, read it, and they wrote in the covers like the dates that they read it, and I thought that was lovely. And just like little personal touches like that, and the art they have on the walls, and it wasn't all like rosy and great, because obviously they suffered like some persecution for being gay in that time, and them living together was in this house, and I think they lived separately for a while they were trying to get enough money together to buy this house. I just found it fascinating. I love learning about people's lives, particularly people that are different to me, and completely different experiences, and I just loved it so much. Again, would like to read this in physical copy. And I really like the way that it was structured. So it was structured around the seasons and the four men, and you just get all their histories. I just loved it so much. And it's one of those ones that I keep thinking about often when I'm walking across that common, because I'll think about, oh, when I was here I was listening to this book, and then it will remind me of what part I was listening to. Just loved it. I thought it was brilliant. Go read it. What next? Oh, no, let me talk about first Silver Sparrow by Tayari Jones, another library book that I took back. This knocked me for 6 because it was very emotional. This resonated with me on a very personal level. It is about 2 sisters, so we get 2 narratives. We start with Dana, who is the secret child of James Witherspoon. He has a family, a public family and a secret family. So Dana is the secret child that he visits like once a week, her and her mother. But she knows that he is married to 2 different women. So he's married to her mother, but they're the secret part. And she has a sister, Charisse, who she knows she is not allowed to come into contact with, because James, her father, is like, you know about her, but you must stay away from her. And this was quite a heartbreaking book, but I really enjoyed it. The writing's Tayari Jones' writing style is just, I loved it so much. It was gripping. It just kept me turning the pages. I really felt for Dana. I was like, my heart was with her the whole time, even when the narrative switches halfway through and we get Charisse's perspective. So it's about these 2 girls and like when they eventually interact, and the relationships of James and his 2 wives and his daughters, and the way that he treats them differently. And I think a lot of people will have experiences of difficult family situations, not necessarily having a bigamist father, because that's quite extreme, but for people that have dual families. So in my case, it's my dad didn't live with me. He lived with his second wife and her children, and I saw him at weekends. And so lots of people are going to have situations where they have split families and maybe don't see their dads very often, and that really resonated with me and was quite an emotional thing. So I really enjoyed that book. I felt like, yeah, I know where this is coming from, and it was great. I just really enjoyed it. I still haven't read An American Marriage, so I need to get onto that, because I bloody love her writing style. Then the reason I wanted to talk about Silver Sparrow first was because next on my list is The Secret Lives of Church Ladies by Deesha Philyaw. One of my favourite stories in here reminded me very much of Silver Sparrow. So there's a story in here called Peach Cobbler, which is almost a little bit of the same setup, and it is about kind of a child's perspective on what adults are doing when adults are not necessarily doing morally great things. So in this Peach Cobbler story, the mother is having an affair with the priest, who comes over to their house every week, and she makes him a peach cobbler that the daughter is not allowed to eat. And her mother is telling her that it's God coming over to their house. And so like as she gets older, she realizes what's going on, and that her mum's just like having sex with this guy every week. The thing I loved about these stories, they're all, again, all very different, and there were some just really great characters in here. They're all kind of focused around women that are in this community that go to a church or have some dealings with a church. One of my favourite stories was, I think it's JL, a young teenager who is a young girl who is like has a crush on the preacher's wife, and it's again a dual perspective of JL. She's like totally obsessed with this woman, and it's her diaries, but it's also her grandmother who's reading her diaries, being really shocked that her granddaughter is in love with a woman. I just thought it was fantastic. Also, there's a really great one which is instructions for married Christian husbands, which is about a woman who just has affairs with these married men and sets the rules, and I love that. It was very short and sharp, but it was basically like, you're not going to get involved with me, we're doing this on my terms, and I love that very much. It was great. Again, every one of these stories was fantastic. There wasn't a dud in here, and sometimes you do get that when you get short story collections, so enjoyed that very much. How long is my voice going to hold out? Okay, we're nearly there. Then the only non-fiction on my list, Don't Touch My Hair by Emma Dabiri. This book is amazing. It is about the effects of slavery and colonialism told through black hair. So I learned so much with this book. I learned a lot. So it is about hair and hairstyles and what that means for black culture and throughout history. But it feels like there's a whole world of knowledge in this book, because Emma Dabiri talks about like African knowledge and African cultures that were like wiped out when colonialism hit. So there's fascinating things in here about time, the way that the Yoruba people viewed time, and it's very kind of philosophical, and there's stuff in here about mathematics, like the way that African mathematics was conceived, and I was just like, I don't do maths, right? It goes over my head, but it was just fascinating. And all of that history and knowledge that was just kind of obliterated when invaders came over and was like, this is nonsense, you're all savages. And she just does it so well. You learn so much in this, but it's not heavy. Like, it is a little bit academic, but it's not difficult to read. It's so easy to read, and she always brings it back to like a little bit of personal memoir, because so she's talking about her own experiences of growing up black in Ireland, and really kind of switching it up between the academic material and like the popular culture references, and I just thought it was fantastic. It was amazing. This will be a book I think that I return to again and again. And this week I am teaching a seminar on post-colonial thought, so I am going to be using parts of this book for my seminar. So already it's come in handy. It's fascinating. If you haven't read it, do go read it. Then another one from the library, Unsettled Ground by Claire Fuller. I adored this book. It was quite bleak. So it's about two 50-year-old twins, Jeannie and Julius, who are kind of thrown into looking after themselves when their 70-year-old mother dies unexpectedly. And they are very, very kind of poor. They're living in this house which they don't own, and they kind of go through these series of unfortunate events where they find out exactly like how much money they didn't have, and that their mum was really owing people money all over the place, and they try and like piece together what's happened, and when they're trying to figure out why she was hiding all this stuff from them and what was going on, and they're also just trying to live and get like basic day-to-day needs. It's really heartbreaking. And it looks at kind of impoverishment in rural areas where people don't like have the internet and don't have knowledge of how to get help, or see help as charity and something they shouldn't be asking for. So I found that really interesting, and yeah, just like very gripping. Jeannie is one of my favourite characters that I've read this year. She's really stayed with me. And Julius. I just love them. And just thought it was an amazing book. I love Claire Fuller's writing. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about it other than don't worry, because if you're worried about the dog, there's a dog in here. And sometimes when there's dogs in books and you think, oh, please don't kill the dog, don't worry, that does not happen, because I can't deal with dog death. I'm a bit John Wick about that. Right, then the last book on my list, I think, have I talked about all the ones that I don't have? Yes, the last book on my list, because this video is too long, is Assembly by Natasha Brown. This was a book that felt like a gut punch. I read it in a day because it's obviously very thin. It's so, again, another novel that is very, it feels tight. It feels tightly crafted. There's so much in this book for how small it is. And the best description that I love on the back is by Olivia Sujic, and she says, as a summary of this book, it's Mrs. Dalloway meets Citizen by Claudia Rankine. And I thought that was such a perfect description because it is like told over one day. Our protagonist, who is not named, I don't think, is a black British woman who has tried to assimilate into kind of wealthy, middle class British values. So she's gone to the right university, she's got a good education, she's got a good job, she's got a good house, she's bought art, she's in like the financial world, she's got a white boyfriend, and we follow her as we're going on this this one day to go to her boyfriend's parents for a party, and they're kind of you know, a bit up themselves, and it is about her experiences, the way she's trying to assimilate into this culture, but it's kind of falling apart. And it's so clever. I can't do it justice because it's so clever. The writing is just, I keep going back to that word, it's so tight. It's just perfect. And I think you could read this book multiple times and get something new from it every time. So immediately after I finished this, I was like, I want to write an article about this, particularly in terms of the way that she looks at consumption. Like, there's a lot of reference in here about people eating in terms of what they're actually consuming and the way that they consume it. As in, this is a you know, a commentary on post-colonialism and the effects of that still. And there's so much kind of rich material in here about the way that you consume things without thinking, and or particularly white people, and our main character is very zipped up, and she's almost like refusing to take things into her body, whereas all the other characters are described very much in the way that they're like they're taking things, they're consuming, and partly that feels like a reflection on their consuming her. I just think there's something really interesting there. So that's an article that I'm currently musing over and writing. I know I wouldn't do this justice because it's too good, but I would highly recommend it. I think I need to read this again and think about it some more, because it's one of those books, again, I read this in the summer, I think. It's one of those books that keeps swirling around in my mind and I keep thinking about it. So I'm definitely going to reread. Alright, this video is too long. Those are the 12 books which are my favourites of 2021. Talk to me in the comments below if you have read any of them and if you enjoyed them as much as me. Also, give me any recommendations based on these that you think I might enjoy. And I will get back to you very soon, hopefully with that vlog of Shepherd's Dean, that writing retreat I went on to, because it means I don't have to speak because I've already filmed it, and hopefully my voice will recover for the next video. Take care everyone, see you later, bye.